stage here. Okay. Well, thanks to CFR for having me, and thanks, Nick, for that introduction. I'm really happy to be here because you all are really the standard bearer on bipartisan thought on foreign policy. This body was actually founded between the world wars at a time of real disagreement and debate over America's role in the world. President Wilson was championing the League of Nations. The Senate was opposed. Ordinary Americans were split. This council emerged from that lack of consensus to answer one fundamental question: how should America engage the world to keep us safe? Today, we're faced with a similar question, and it feels appropriate to try and answer it here with all of you. This is personal to me. As you heard, by training, I am a national security professional. I'm also what we now call a 9/11 baby. I happened to be in New York City on my second day of grad school when 9/11 happened. It completely changed my life. I was recruited by the CIA and served 3 tours in Iraq alongside the military before serving at the Pentagon and the White House under 2 presidents, 1 Republican and 1 Democrat. Here's what that experience taught me. A national security worth its salt must do 2 things. First, protect U.S. citizens, the homeland, and our way of life. And second, advance American prosperity. That's it. But that's easier said than done. In the years since I left the Pentagon, the world seems increasingly chaotic, contested, and out of control. Authoritarian powers are on the march, coercing smaller neighbors. A full-blown revolution in technology is underway. Institutions we all grew up with are fading. The global economy is fragmenting. We all know, especially in this room, that the old playbook isn't working, and we don't yet know what the new playbook looks like. President Biden nibbled at the margins of this playbook. President Trump is burning it all down, the good with the bad. With all that noise, it's easy to spend all our time on the issues of the day. Troops, American troops in U.S. cities, Ukraine, Gaza. But for our safety over the next 50 years, we have to think longer term. Because if I've learned anything as a CIA officer and a Pentagon official, if you don't give the future a seat at the table, you make America less safe. So let's get back to basics. To do that, I went to what most in this room would probably think is an unlikely source: Michiganders. Since 2017, I've been representing the greatest state in the union, Michigan, in Congress, first in the House and now in the Senate. I often feel like I have 1 foot in the national security world, 1 foot in my life in Michigan. So when I decided to give this speech, I wanted to do something that most national security types wouldn't think was important: reach out to regular Michiganders and get their thoughts on the subject. Last month, I held town halls on national security in Benton Harbor and Troy, Michigan, with people across the political spectrum. For 90 minutes each, we talked about what they saw as the greatest threats to their safety and prosperity and what they expect from their government. Here's what I heard. First and foremost, economic stress is impacting every aspect of their lives. No matter what we're talking about, our discussions veered into the cost of living, trade, tariffs, and how U.S. policies could hurt the already struggling economy. Michiganders across the board saw China as the single biggest threat to American economic security. To them, China owns everything: the clothes on our backs, the phones in our pockets, our treasury, our debt. And in the words of one Michigander, when you have someone entrenched in your own house, how you deal with them is very important. Second, technology is putting our citizens on the front lines, and the government isn't doing enough to protect them. From social media to AI to cyber attacks, tech threats were top of mind for everyone who attended those sessions. One Michigander said it well: warfare is still on the ground, it's still rockets, but it's also changed. Cyber warfare can be just as brutal. Their bank accounts, their hospitals, their kids' data. Everyone had a personal story of being hacked or ransomed. On AI, most seemed to know it's coming, but they didn't know what it meant for them. They heard AI can do some good things, but they also feel a new round of job loss, which we've seen firsthand in Michigan. Regardless of the type of technology, Michiganders feel utterly unprotected, like the government was shrugging their shoulders on these threats. That's a direct quote. Some folks brought up President Trump's approach to burning things down. For most, to be honest, the jury is still out. And there's a message in that ambivalence. Many Americans have lost confidence that we know what we're doing abroad. And they have good reason to feel uneasy. They've seen and fought the forever wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They see support to Ukraine and Israel without resolution, all while the middle class is suffering at home. While most Americans still genuinely believe in a strong American role in the world, there's no mistaking that there's a trust deficit after the last 20 years. Before I move on, I just want to flag what didn't come up in those town halls. Traditional security issues like missile defense, nuclear weapons, and major terrorist attacks were not top of mind. Michiganders still expect their government to protect them from those things, but as a rule, they're focused on their pocketbooks and their kids. I'd count this, frankly, as a victory. For all our faults, we should be proud that for almost 80 years, we haven't had another world war or a nuclear exchange. And despite how President Trump paints those who work in national security, we should continue that critical work. So that's what I heard from Michiganders. And while they may not use fancy language, it's clear that they understand warfare has changed. So informed by them, I'm going to focus on three big things that, if we get right, will define American security for the next 50 years. First, we need to treat economic security as national security and be ruthless about growing the middle class. Second, we need to win the tech race, just like we won the nuclear and space races. That's especially true for AI. And third, we need to fundamentally rethink how we protect Americans, since they are now on the front lines. First, on economic security. We need to treat economic security as a national security priority because it is. I believe in my bones that the existential threat to the United States is not coming from abroad, it's the shrinking middle class here at home. Using the term existential is not hyperbole. If you want to understand how the US got to this fractious, authoritarian moment in our history, all you need to know is that the American middle class has shrunk since its high water in 1970. In the last 50 years, the share of Americans in the middle class has fallen by nearly 20%, and all of that lost wealth has moved towards those who already have it rather than those who are striving for it. That's not a political statement, that's cold, hard fact. What does that mean for everyday Americans? It means people cannot provide to their kids what was provided to them. A home of their own, a fishing cabin up north, a trip to Disneyland every so often. These are the things that define a comfortable middle-class life, and when Americans can no longer afford them, they feel angry. They lose their dignity. They feel shame, and they start looking for someone or something to blame. That's how we begin to tear each other apart from the inside, and how voters end up jumping into bed with anyone promising change. Back in June, I fleshed out an economic war plan to grow the middle class through domestic policy. But the truth is, this needs to be a national security policy as well. Because while the wars of yesterday were fought with tanks and guns, the wars of today are economic, and they are underway. China certainly has been engaging in economic warfare for years and has gone so far as to build it into their national security strategy published this year. So to get our heads in the game, there are three things we need to do to protect the middle class. First, we must ensure that the dollar remains the world's currency. We built the global financial system after World War II, and we have deeply benefited from molding that system in our own image. Dollar dominance means lower interest rates for things like mortgages and car loans, more valuable 401ks, cheaper imports, and lower inflation. But right now, the dollar is being undermined, largely by our own actions. Trump's efforts to bend the Fed to his will, his sloppy tariffs, and a self-generated trade war. Already, the dollar's value has fallen more in the last 7 months than in the last 50 years. Countries are looking for alternatives. This all plays directly into the hands of China, who wants to run, obviously, the world on their currency. So we need a comprehensive plan to maintain the dollar as the leading global currency. That also means, and I know this is controversial, especially in New York, leading on the money of the future. Just as countries like Kenya are skipping traditional banking and going right to mobile money, we want the digital currencies of tomorrow to be keyed to the US dollar. Despite Trump's abuse of the meme coin, we need to double down on dollar-backed stablecoins. And the US government should issue a global digital dollar, just like the Chinese did back in 2020. The second thing, we need to treat our critical supply chains as national assets, national security assets. While some items like Rubik's Cubes and ladies' razors will never again be made in the United States, critical items like pharmaceuticals, chips, autos should be made at least in part in the US. China has weaponized these supply chains, giving them a veto on our economy that we should not accept. We therefore need real industrial policy that strengthens American industries and offers taxpayer a return on their investment. We need to stand up a sovereign wealth fund to invest in technologies that usually scare off investors. And then we need a rare earth reserve to stockpile critical minerals, just as we set up a strategic petroleum reserve in the 1970s after the oil shock. By the way, as someone who comes from Michigan, let me just say that smart industrial policy also means prosperity for the middle class. New manufacturing, engineering, construction jobs. And critically, it means spreading the wealth across America, not just enriching 18 tech executives in Silicon Valley. But if we want to do any of that, we need allies. When I held these town halls in Michigan, most people understood that our friendships keep us safe. To that end, we need to expand participation in our partnerships, not shrink, and think more creatively about our Cold War organizations. What if, for instance, in addition to military alliances, we had a lithium alliance or a chip alliance? One can imagine a NATO-like body where countries agree to shared export controls, shared tech, and protection against Chinese coercion. But to protect our economy, we also need to acknowledge that there is another key battlefield, and that's technology. We are in a tech race right now with China, whether most acknowledge it or not. And there's no area more important to win than on artificial intelligence. I had the opportunity to visit Los Alamos National Lab this past weekend. They are building a new AI research center that will be housed at the University of Michigan, go blue. Los Alamos was the birthplace of nuclear technology 80 years ago, and I left this tour with the distinct feeling that AI raises some of the same fundamental questions that nukes did. How should they be used? By whom? Under what rules? Only this time, we are creating a technology that can become smarter than the humans who are designing it. And unlike nuclear weapons, AI is almost entirely created and controlled by the private sector. The last time we were in a race like this, we won by setting up the Manhattan Project. We brought together the brightest minds of a generation, including many foreign and immigrant scientists. Research funding exploded. Years later, Congress set up the Atomic Energy Commission, where government leaders worked with the private sector to develop civilian nuclear energy. Together, they mapped out the rules of the road that still govern nuclear power today. We need the same level of ambition now, updated for the modern age. If Congress were at all healthy, we'd be setting this up right now, today. And I'm ready to work with anyone who actually wants to win this race. But it's not enough to just invent the new technology. You also have to adapt that technology, especially in the military. We all know that the wars of the future will be fought with advanced tech. But the Pentagon has simply not kept pace with adopting that tech. And our defense industrial base is falling far short of delivering at scale. China is literally eating our lunch on this score. They're able to take a new weapon system from idea to the hands of their soldiers in 5 years. For the US, it's 12. To help speed up that adoption, we should actually take a page from Ukraine. And whenever possible, start with commercial technology that's already on the market and adapt it for military use. We literally need to take a battle axe to the old way of doing business, where we spend excessive time and excessive money building the next big toy, only to use it for just one threat. Finally, in this new era of economic and tech warfare, it's our citizens who are now serving on the front lines. And they are under attack. Every day, our adversaries are using commercial tech to target Americans. Some of those attacks are on American individuals or businesses, scamming seniors or hacking schools. But other attacks are on our infrastructure. The Chinese government putting malware into our water treatment plants or hacking every single phone in America. A Russian group hacking our oil pipelines and shutting off gas to the eastern seaboard. These attacks target our civilians in an attempt to effectively make us go blind, deaf, and dumb. Make no mistake, these are homeland attacks, and AI will only make it worse. It's therefore critical that we reorient the government to protect our citizens at home. We need to train a cyber national guard that deploys to help prevent or respond to attacks. We also need to go after these criminals at much higher rates by equipping and resourcing the FBI and DoD to take down their operations abroad. And on the national level, we need a new vision of homeland security, updated from my era of 9/11, with new playbooks, new authorities, and new capabilities to protect Americans from digital warfare. We have the most sophisticated hacking tools in the world, so instead of being scared to use them, we need to fight back and hit our enemies where it hurts. If China is going to target our power grid and local water systems, we need to take offline the servers they are using to do that. And if a cyber attack in the US causes the same damage as a physical strike, we need to treat it as an act of war. To sum up, we need economic security to be a national security priority. We need to get our ass in gear on the tech arms race, particularly on AI, and we need to protect Americans at home from these new threats. We do that, and we have a good shot at protecting American security and prosperity into the future. This will require a fundamental reorganization of the way we look at national security work, and old habits die hard. But our security, once again, depends on our ability to change and adapt. To that end, let me put in one final plug. Our entire national security approach, what we all grew up with, is based on the National Security Act of 1947. It created the Department of Defense. It created the CIA. It was an incredibly important document at the time, and that reorganization helped us win the Cold War and the space race. But we're long overdue for change. The good news is that we have a rare moment of opportunity here. Trump is indeed burning everything down. But instead of snapping back to the old way of doing things, we have to build something new out of the ashes. I am not naive. I know we have real problems right now, but a real lack of leaders that are focused on the future is a problem. If leaders are able to rise above their partisanship, America still has a really good hand to play. We still have the best workers, the best researchers, the best innovators in the world. Our economy has been the envy of countries across the globe, and we have a very long history of doing the impossible. That's what this moment demands of us. That's what the American people demand of us, and that is what is our duty to deliver. So thanks so much. Appreciate your time.